Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're talking about a game that's very dear to me. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! But I'm going to talk to it from the perspective as a board gamer. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, first off, before we even jump into this, let's talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Here is a card game by Kazuki Takahashi. It's about 20 years old, came out in 1999, and this has you playing as duelists, going back and forth with each other with a deck of cards, and your job is to use your monsters to reduce your opponent's life points to 0, from 8,000 to 0 by attacking them. You're going to be using spells to power up and maybe mess with your opponent's monsters, as well as use trap cards in order to stop your opponent from doing things on their turn. It's a game where both players are actively playing, and ideally you're able to have a great time playing fun monsters, attacking, and having a great time using these powerful cards. Now, why do I care about this, and why is this something that I even think about? Back in 2014, I actually won the Yu-Gi-Oh! National Championship for TCG Player. Now, this was a kind of one-off thing that they did. They put it alongside their Magic Championship Series, where they would bring in players and they held a 10K for the winners of the state local tournaments. You brought in points, and based on how well you did in the standings, then you were able to rank, and then the winner received a giant check. I still have this giant check in my gaming area today. Very, very cool. But I don't want to belabor this point. The big thing is, I know what I'm talking about. I've played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's a game that I really like. If you have more interest in this, you can check out TCG Player Infinite if you want to see any feature matches. But now I actually run SideGame LLC, which is a completely different space. No longer am I going head-to-head against people. I'm sharing these hobbies, and I'm sharing these games with people that I enjoy, and I'm sharing games that I enjoy to make great experiences. Now, these come in the forms of all sorts of games, and these games have one big thing in common. Anybody can come up to a table with one of these games and enjoy it. And that's what I want for Yu-Gi-Oh! I want Yu-Gi-Oh! To be a thing that people can enjoy, and that's what this video is for. The big thing that really pushed this list is that I was talking about this game with my friend Amy and one of her friends, Josh. Now, Josh plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Currently. He is very much into the competitive scene, and he wanted to play his deck against us. And to me, it didn't sound very fun, and I was correct. It was not. If you're familiar with any games, you will be very aware of the thing called power creep. So this is in a lot of very popular card games. A card will be printed that's simply just a better version of what existed before. And that happens in Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, with just the monsters. They're going to get better over time. It's just going to happen. And eventually, all of your things will become obsolete, and it's all about getting the newest stuff. It's all about knowing the best strategies. And it has even evolved to a point in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! And this has been for years that this has happened, in this card game in particular, where the game is no longer about two duelists bringing monster after monster, clash after one another. It's more about now putting your monsters out first and preventing your opponent from doing anything. And that is what high competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like. You use cards in your hand to, even before the game begins, be able to interact with your opponent, and it's more about luck than it ever has been, which is very unfortunate. Yes, there are minor tweaks that you can make. Yes, sometimes the luck is there or it's not there for both players, and sometimes cool things will happen, but ultimately, it is not an experience that I find very satisfying, and it's ultimately the reason that I really did stop playing this. It became an inaccessible game that I just don't enjoy. And playing with this person who played these competitive games now, and using our decks from the old times, this is just, it's not a good experience. And it's unfortunately not a mindset that I'm not really into. Now, that being said, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has some amazing things. Some of the best things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Still exist, playing powerful monsters with powerful effects, combining small monsters to make big ones, playing powerful spell and trap cards to do things. Everybody loves that feeling of playing a card or playing a monster that does something amazing. It just feels so good, and you see that in board games too. Another amazing thing that I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the trap cards. I love the idea that you're able to play things on your opponent's turns. I love being always engaged and always interested in the action and waiting for the perfect moment. And also knowing when those perfect moments will happen and being able to react to those myself. It feels so good when I'm able to successfully read what a trap card is and dance around it and able to win anyway. Great feeling. And of course, if you're familiar with the TV show or anything like that, or even just memes or pop culture, you'll be familiar with something like Pot of Greed, a powerful card that if you play it against somebody, you feel so good to do such a simple effect. And that's the beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is some cards are so simple in how they work. But unfortunately, with the newer sets, the text on cards has become grotesque and huge. It's all about knowing every single card in a set and building decks to their most refined points. And unfortunately, it all leads to that large setup. Now, that's something that I don't enjoy. This is what I enjoy. Now this is my solution to this problem. This is what's called a GOAT format deck. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! Majorly in 2013, 2014. Those were probably my best years of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where I topped in a lot of events and did a lot of things. But these decks are actually from 2005. They take the essence of what makes a good game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And put it into a 40-card deck. Now the best way to do this is each player builds a deck like this and plays head-to-head. Each player will construct the deck, have the exact same cards, and go face-to-face. This was a time where every deck was pretty much built to play against an additional copy of the same deck. So it's very interesting as this game becomes something more of an abstract. You are going to be playing cards that you know can counter your opponents. You know the cards that your opponent potentially will have, but there's that little bit of luck factor that's going to make it so that the outcome is going to be different every time. And sometimes it won't just be the skilled player who wins. But that's not to say that skill does not play a huge factor. All of those things remain in the game. Whoever is going to play their cards right will 95% of the time win this game. And that is the beauty of this format. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these cards. So first off, the deck is comprised of multiple copies of the same cards. So when you are learning how to play this game, it's easy to understand and easy to see what you can use. You can learn what the cards do, and it's easy to play. In addition, your turns are very simple in this game. Normally, in the newer Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're going to be summoning a lot of monsters on one turn. Your turns generally will take a lot longer than normal board game turns, and that's a problem in standard board gaming. It is too much downtime. In this Yu-Gi-Oh!, your turn is very simple. You play a monster, you play some spells and traps, you do some attacks, and your opponent is doing things when that is happening. Another important thing about this is you retain those powerful cards. If you'll notice on these symbols here, there are a lot of these. This card is banned, this card is not allowed. But that's okay, because the power level of all the cards in general are significantly lower, that a couple of strong cards are not going to throw off this curve. And once again, each player has access to these cards, so it's all about knowing when and how to use them. Now this is basic Yu-Gi-Oh! Concepts here, but the big thing is you still get to play with powerful monsters, you still get to play with wonderful cards, you still get to use combos, you still get to understand and play and feel that joy of Yu-Gi-Oh! But it's in a setting where it's more approachable and it can be played with anyone. Now that being said, you still get to use these really cool boss monsters. If you're familiar with the show, this is one of the main characters, one of his best monsters, and you get to use it in this deck. And the really cherry on top here is this is affordable. A lot of the times, new competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks will run you lots of dollars for a single card. But in here, you can pick up everything you need for about $50 for everything. Now that's a lot for a board game. $100 for a board game is a lot, but I think that this experience is so good. It's so awesome, and it still gives results to this day that I think it's worth it. If you enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! If it's something that you used to play that you really liked, this would be my approach. The best thing that you can do is look for what's called a GOAT format deck. Go ahead and get 2 sets of it, bring it together, and you will have a blast. Now once again, you'll get to play various trap cards. You'll get to use them at appropriate times. You'll get to use powerful spells and monsters without completely shutting down an opponent and giving the opponent the ability to respond and being able to actually have fun going that back and forth. You'll be able to get out of tough positions by playing your cards right and using your cards in satisfying ways. And the biggest thing that I think that this game has over other games similar to it, things like Magic the Gathering, things like Pokemon, the trading card game, is you get to use the cards as resources. I don't need energy to pay for it. It is the resource. By approaching Yu-Gi-Oh! This way, you've changed it from this game of can I go first, can I get lucky, to an abstract game that's up there with the best. A game that you can play and you can say, hey, I outplayed you. I used my pieces, I took over your pieces. Yes, there was a little bit of luck, which keeps it more fun and exciting, and not completely 100% every time, but I was able to use my cards to defeat you. And that's the video. If you have any questions about what you saw here, please let me know down in the comments below. I know this is a little different from some of the other videos that I do, but I do really want to stress that I love playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's great. I still show it to children every week. They have a great time playing, and it's one that I will always prefer playing as a board game instead of a card game. Thank you so much for watching. SideGame Strong.